Hi guys, my name is Adnan Baykal. Let's get started. I know there is a session starting at 1:30, but this is an hour session. If you can stay, we'd love to have you here. But if you have to attend another session, we understand as well. I'm Adnan Baykal. I'm with the organization called Global Cyber Alliance. We are a non-for-profit organization, which means we don't sell anything. We get donations, and our sole purpose of existence is identifying global systemic cyber risk and then develop solutions to eliminate those cyber risks. We do understand that you can totally eliminate the risk, but we try to reduce it. So the first couple things that we took on were around risk with phishing. So we developed a solution called Quad 9. Quad 9 is a global Anycast DNS infrastructure that currently exists in about 120 physical locations around the world. And it gets threat intelligence, crowdsourced threat intelligence from right now 19 different threat intel providers, and provides completely free and privacy-preserving cybersecurity sort of service. We have about 20 million users right now, and we have somewhere around 2% growth rate every day. So it's a service that is freely available, and we want to build on the success of Quad 9 to provide additional services and additional protection for IoT environments. The purpose of this session, today's session, is actually not me talking, but us talking together, and really identifying the cybersecurity challenges that exist in smart city deployments. We held 4 roundtables so far. We held 2 in New Orleans, 1 in New York City, 1 in London. This is the 5th one, and then we will have 1 in, please come on. We will have 1 in Singapore at the end of July, and that will be the end of sort of our study. And the goal is, again, to identify these pain points when cities are implementing smart city initiatives. And now what we do is we build coalitions to develop free solutions. So this is not a sales thing. Develop free solutions that addresses those cyber risks, so that we can make smart cities more secure, and hence serve our purpose of reducing the cyber risks that may come with the IoT and smart city initiatives. So on your handout, you see this picture. This basically is our IoT initiatives. This is what we are doing on IoT sort of risk arena. We are building honey farms and honey pots that are distributed around the globe, and the purpose of that is to collect threat intelligence information about the attacks that are targeting IoT devices. We are building cyber ranges in key locations around the world, and the cyber ranges' purpose is to have these dedicated cyber labs that are working on developing solutions around the threats that we identify. We are working with NIST and a couple other organizations to identify a protocol that actually makes edge devices smarter, meaning if you have a Nest thermostat and it starts suddenly calling out to domains that it is not supposed to, how do we automatically give a feedback to that edge router so that it can make smarter decisions about either blocking that device on the network, quarantining it, or VLANing it over. And then we have the smart cities in the center of this, because we believe that smart city actually represents the overall IoT realm. You have a little bit of everything, and you have actually more challenges, and if we can actually build solutions that can solve problems for smart cities, then those solutions will be able to replicate it to other areas. And as part of the smart cities, in this big picture we have, this is you guys. This is the round tables, and this is what we are doing today. So what I like to do is just present you the format, and then we get started. We go around the room, we introduce ourselves, and then we very briefly talk about how we are involved in a smart city initiative. And then the next round, we talk about what we are doing on cybersecurity and privacy on those specific projects, or what our concerns are. And then that usually kickstarts a discussion. And then again, hopefully I'm not going to be doing most of the talking. We are just going to talk and share our experiences. And at the end, we should be able to identify 2-3 key things that are common on all teams that says, this is the problem that we have. at the end, I will also tell you the results of the roundtables that we held in the previous roundtables, and tell you what those risks are, and hopefully there's going to be a lot of overlaps. So with that, let's start from the right. And Len, do you want to start? We're just going to introduce ourselves, and I know you are a known member in this community.
Thank you. So my name is Lan Jensen, and I'm a member of the GCTC Cybersecurity and Privacy Advisory Committee. This committee it started earlier this year, born out of success servicing the wireless supercluster. And so the leadership thought, since it is the other side of the coin, right? One side is smart, and the other side is secure, and then together you form smart and secure cities and communities. So it's important. So they asked us to step up and service all the superclusters and action clusters. And we are super honored that our members, like Adnan and Mariam, are able to actually bring in their experience from their work with the New York City and then 2-3 dozens of other countries that they have already done. And then they're able to bring the expertise, facilitating such sessions, as well as the findings into this roundtable here today. Eventually, the outcome will be all compiled together and service all of the community of our smart secure cities together. So that's myself.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So, yes.
Okay.
So we're just going to go not really around the room, but around the lines.
Okay. So Limor Schaffman, Director of Smart Buildings Program for TIA. And our interest in this is because, as we've heard, the buildings are an integral part of cities, and they are, in fact, sort of pillars of the city. We need to make sure that the buildings and the infrastructure, and from this perspective, I mean the communications infrastructure, as well as the systems, and anybody who's entering or exiting, the fact that everything is secure and as hardened as possible. So this is a very big issue. It's one that we're focusing on, and so that would be the perspective that we would be looking at.
Jose Gonzalez, International Cooperation Manager of Fiverr. Fiverr is actually a global community built on top of an open source platform.
Michael Dunaway, I'm at the University of Louisiana in Lafayette. I'm the chair of the Public Safety Supercluster, and I'm also on the State Cybersecurity Commission for the state of Louisiana, which is just now stood up, so I'm very interested.
We'll go from the right.
My name is Bobby Kimaswamy. I'm the founder and CEO of a cybersecurity startup company here in Portland called Isolated. I'm just here trying to learn about the space and how we can help.
Yuri Gaudiak, I'm at NASA. I work in the aeronautics division, and we're implementing air traffic management systems for UAVs, drones, and unmanned air taxis. And so there's a major emphasis on the cybersecurity risks there.
I'm Terry Benzel, University of Southern California. I've been funded by DHS for many years to do cybersecurity experimentation. I run a large cyber testbed, cyber range. And our cyber range also has a large educational component to it. And so I'm looking about what services I can bring to the smart cities community for test and experimentation.
Deborah Shands. I work for SRI International in the San Francisco Bay Area, and SRI is supporting Department of Homeland Security in the area of the smart cities work here. And I've been a security researcher for many years, and so I'm just here to get a sense of where the community is going in terms of security and privacy, and what some of the hard problems are. And what people are thinking about they're going to do about them.
Cool. That's exactly what we're talking about. Thank you.
Excellent. Hello, everyone. My name is David Kocher. I'm the Vice President of IoT Solutions at CA. We're one of the world's largest certification authorities, so we deal with SSL, PPI, and code signing certificates. What we do for IoT and for smart cities and things of that nature is we provide mutual authentication from the device level up to the network head end. and we provide that with an encrypted session. So we realize IoT is a large opportunity on a global scale, so we have a system that can issue about 250 million certs per day at a time. We also provide lifecycle management for all IoT devices, so not just the security from the moment it's manufactured, but from the moment it's manufactured until it's taken offline and recycled. Thank you.
This is I'm Nobuhiro Watanabe, NICT of Japan. And NICT is a government-funded research institute for information communication technology, and we developed the resilient communication system. Its name is NavNet. It's a poster session display, and NavNet is, in normal time, NavNet is used for the Wi-Fi hotspot, but in emergency, like a tsunami happens, the system is independently develops Wi-Fi communication system for regional community. So we have some action clusters in Japan using this system.
I'm Coy Schwarzenegger. I'm here from the city of Portland, and I manage the public safety technology division for our IT group. So what I've been interested in is I'm beginning to see the technologies that allow sensors for really for the safety of police officers and firemen, so that we can tell the status and state of an officer or of a fireman, temperature, obviously like temperature and the positioning of a fireman if they're on the ground or that sort of thing, as well as police officers and sensors now that can tell if their gun's out of their holster, if their vest has been penetrated, if they're if they're on the ground, or what can happen, activating body cameras and so on, depending on the state, and sending that kind of information to our 911 center so that they can deploy additional resources if they see an officer or a fireman in distress and in a dangerous situation. So I'm very interested in what the security around that, the kind of protections and so on are there.
I'm Suruchi Kumisa, and I recently graduated from Portland University with MBA. I have done PhD in chemistry before entering into the MBA, and I'm really passionate about the new updates and technology, how it can benefit the community. That's why.
Hi everyone, my name is Brigitte Pineski. I don't have a formal role in cybersecurity, but I advise our investment group here at TI Oregon in terms of startups, and so they like to know what cities and larger groups are planning. So I'm happy to be here.
Hi, Gary Dillitz, Department of Homeland Security. I'm working with LAN and working with the wireless supercluster, and involved in, very interested in adding cybersecurity and making sure that we address cybersecurity in our smart city solutions.
Peter Wong, I'm a director at the Soder Group. We're a small cybersecurity consulting firm in Washington, D.C. I'm helping support SRI and DHS, and we're just trying to understand what security and privacy challenges are a priority in the smart city community.
Cool. I'm Guy Allais with Intel. I'm working on security for Internet of Things, and specifically product manager for our enhanced privacy ID. It's a technology that allows devices to reach out to the internet, find their owner, and securely onboard into that service in less than a minute.
Yes. My name is Raj Nathan. I'm with Hexagon PPM. It's a Swedish company. I live in Portland, and we have clients that manage critical infrastructure, hydro power plants, chemical industries, oil and gas, mining. But we don't have a cybersecurity solution in our company. We have clients that worry about this a lot. So I'm here just to learn about what the service.
Hi everyone, my name is Chris Oh, Director of the Hong Kong Trade Development Council. Basically, a government agencies in Hong Kong focusing a lot on bilateral trade and business partnership. I'm very interested in the subjects of smart city and cybersecurity for sure, and would like to learn a little bit more from all of you regarding the aspect of private partnership and potentially some kind of business partnership from the world.
Absolutely.
I'm Liz Mitchell. I'm with the City of Portland. I'm in our IT group, and I'm also the Smart Cities Coordinator for the IT department of the City of Portland on the steering committee. And I'm here mostly to learn. I like yourself, don't have a formal cybersecurity role, but I am daily scared by the news that I am told by our InfoSec department. And so I'm just sort of here to learn a little bit.
Chris Strong, City Gresham. I'm the transportation manager, novice in smart cities, even more so in cybersecurity, so I'm just eager to learn.
I'm Jeff Arnold. I'm the Chief Technology Officer for Smart Cities at Verizon. The main reason I'm here is that I was previously CTO of a company called Sensity that developed a complete end-to-end smart city IT system, including original hardware design, software design, cloud service design, networking design, end-to-end. And we've been deploying and operating that over the years. And so I can bring the experience of the entire cybersecurity aspect of doing that all the way from design to operation and the life cycle of the entire system.
Hi, my name is Charlotte Seto. I'm currently at the National Fair Housing Alliance, but I'm currently transitioning into the smart city sphere with the hopes of furthering equity in this domain.
My name is Sue Bebeck. I am out San Francisco. I'm the product manager for our technology platform that supports a citizen empowerment program around low carbon lifestyles, resiliency, and livability. I'm also a contributing writer for GreenBiz, and I'm wearing that hat at this conference. I'm writing about PPPs in cities, and one of my articles will be about how a city sort of gets ready for robust partnerships, and being savvy around cybersecurity certainly is one of those, and so I'm really interested in hearing about the Alliance.
Hi, my name is Benjamin Ng. I'm from Singapore. I'm like cybersecurity and physical security.
So what we'll do is, because we have a large crowd, and I realize that this is, if you do a true roundtable, it's going to take a very long time. What I'll do is position certain things and then hear your opinion on it. The first is, as you know, SANS or CIS now has been developing top 20 critical controls, and these top 20 critical controls are accepted globally to address the cybersecurity risks for IT environments. When we talk about smart cities are basically exponentially grown, large, distributed IT environments that are not centrally managed. So they actually come with their own challenges. However, I believe, and it is the theory, that the top 5 critical controls that are developed by SANS still apply to smart city environments. But with the exponential growth of the sensors and network devices in a disjoint environment, how do you guys do, or do you care about inventory? Do you think there is a solid solution that effectively addresses the hardware inventory for the environment? Because if you don't, I mean, the theory is, and it is a logical theory, that you cannot protect what you don't know, right? So if you don't have a good account of all the sensors and all the network devices on your environment, you are not going to know, whether those devices are secured, whether those devices are going to be, they need an update, whether those devices are abused by parties or they are leaking data, etc. So let's hear from the crowd. What do you guys think? Do you think you are addressing the inventory issue, hardware inventory, which is the top critical control? Yes.
Well, I'm a little confused because many of the scenarios for smart cities include citizen science. And so, many of us will use our phones, right? Like the smart lamp we saw today. And so and we provide data too, and you certainly are not gonna have inventory on my contribution to the smart city.
Yes, no, not your contribution, but lamps, right? Or water pollution sensors, or air pollution sensors, or we heard about garbage sensors, etc.
Well, it would be bigger than that, right? Because they'll dynamically reconfigure into systems, so it's an N squared kind of growing.
Yes, no, absolutely,
problem space.
absolutely.
So just not individual units, but configurations.
So, yes.
Who's inventory, right? I mean, there's maybe a few components percentage-wise of these things that a city might own, but if you've got all the different companies that own things and regions and individuals and stuff, so who would take an inventory? And whose inventory of what stuff? I mean, I'm confused.
So if you have a device which is connecting to a wireless network, it is required that that device have some information in there which will allow it to connect that network. So whoever provisioned that information in that device to say, you control this network and here's your identity on that network. That's the start of the root of any inventory of the systems. Now,
Well, I thought inventory meant someone knew what they had deployed.
right, so that's a starting point. Okay, so now you know you have a device, and that means it's not all that doesn't look from a phone. Actually taking that device and saying this device in that corresponds to the following city asset in the following geolocation, the following roles, the following operational ownership. That's part of an operational workflow, which is the result of negotiation between the service provider, the city, the other stakeholders involved in that. So the question is oversimplified, right? Ultimately, somebody owns that device, legal liability, etc. The city has, and it is attached to a city pole or a city, the cable running to a city conduit. The city is a stakeholder in the ownership and operation of that resource.
I think that's a great question because at the city of Portland, when we just went through this, and it took us a year and a half to get to this contract because there were so many negotiations over who owned the actual sensors. And we knew we wanted to keep that inventory. So in the end, the city owned the sensors. That is not how the vendors wanted it. But there are different pieces, like somebody else owns the data. We get to access this piece of the data, but the base data goes here. So it's an excellent question, and I think it is scenario based. I think every single time it can be different. Who owns what?
So you said that you went through 1.5 year contract negotiations, and city owns these devices, and you maintain the inventory. Do you have electronic base for maintaining that inventory, or is it at the procurement time? You build Excel spreadsheets, or you enter them into a database, and you say, okay, these are our devices.
I wish I could answer that question. The Transportation Bureau is managing the inventory, and I don't know what they're using to manage that inventory.
Oh.
It's certainly the case that to the extent to which the device is communicating wirelessly, the network, whether it's owned by the city or via private, it has information about that. Now, how the network providers asset information is linked to the city asset information is linked to the operators. Yeah, that's the result of the kind of complex negotiation. We have relationship with different cities based upon those different negotiations. That's okay. Cities typically will want somebody to be the one for it to choke those. So ultimately, in the case of we're putting sensors on the poles, and they want us to keep those devices secure. They will insist that we own that aspect of those devices. They rely upon us to keep that as part of the contract.
It's part of the contract, and you guys are perfectly okay with that.
No, so just to go on that, when we set up a security ecosystem globally, there's a policy authority and a management authority. So I would look at a company like yours as being the management authority. You're actually physically touching the devices. I would see the city as kind of the policy authority. You're setting the guidelines for that.
Yep.
No one's really mentioned the device manufacturer here. And we have to go back to that manufacturing line because a lot of the security that we're putting on goes in and is flashed onto that silicon, that TPM. at the time of manufacture. So a device manufacturer needs to get an order from the city of Portland, fulfilled by Verizon, that then goes back and formulates a marriage between the hardware and the software at the beginning. So we have that foundation from the beginning. That way we're not putting a device out there and saying, okay, now let's add security to it. And whenever we're doing over-the-air type security updates, there is the chance for that man in the middle to come in and deviate what the health of the ecosystem should be.
And if you take away nothing else from this meeting here, the point you just made, cybersecurity starts with design. The software, where do the bits come from? The chip, the hardware, where do the chips come from? Who assembled them? Who had control of all of the components as they were brought together? And we focus so much on the later stages of the life cycle of the device. Though somebody hacked it, but the design is infinitely more important.
So I'll bring the sort of the number 3 critical control, which is password management for devices. Do you guys think that the industry and the operators and the implementers have a good handle on password management for these sensors? You know, there are sensors that come with default passwords that don't necessarily have an easy way to change them. Most of them are published on the internet that you can just Google. But then there are sensors that have certificates built into them, right? You just burn a certificate, you use PKI, and everything works great. So, but not many manufacturers are doing that. So I saw a hand. Yes, please.
Yeah. So I think anybody that's applying a user password login to a machine is making a big mistake.
Yes.
Machines to machine should be through authentication. That's where your certificates on the device, rooted in a hardware root of trust, are absolutely essential.
We know that, but is everyone doing? We know that you shouldn't set a simple password, but yet people are still using 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
You end up with machines that have a default password on them, and those get co-opted by botnets, and that's what attack the
Mirai, and yes, no, absolutely. I don't think we are discussing whether we should do it, but are people doing it?
No, we're not passing username and password into text.
There.
And we're using shared keys, so our security policy is you put a unique key on each device, and people are saying, well, we're going to get one key and
just put it on all the devices, and then it gets compromised.
So now you have 500,000 devices. One gets compromised, you have 499,999.
Do you have? I mean, certificates are a great solution if you are able to manage a complex PKI infrastructure. Yes. But we've been doing that for a while, so I think we got pretty good at doing PKI. But do you have? And this is to you specifically because you have experience in this. Are there ways to easily update the certificate on the devices? Or you burn it, it's done?
5 years ago, there was not. Today, there is.
So there is.
As I had mentioned, we want to make sure that we're not just taking care of it from that point of manufacturing.
But it's the life cycle of
the not going to be good enough 10 or 15 years later. Yeah. When the city of Portland invests into a device, you want it to get the maximum life out of it. So that you can, from an expense and a cost standpoint, you want to maximize the life of that device. In the cable world, we're looking at set-top boxes and cable modems at a 7 to 10 year life. So, but we've got to be able to go out. If a Mirai or a Reaper occurs again, we have to be able to go out, revoke that certificate, and put a new one.
And then put a new one. Is that a manual process or it's an automated
process? We have that automated.
You have that automated.
We have that automated. The problem is we're generalizing to party much, right? If you're putting a device out there that's smart enough to handle a camera or some other kind of contact processing, then you're going to be supporting that. But there are plenty of IoT devices, for example, a moisture sensor that's got a battery life that's going to live that 10 years, wake up twice a day and report. You don't have the
processing power
to support OTA or any other kinds of like that, and that's okay, right?
Because those devices don't have a lot of processing power to be abused.
It's a there are maybe for a gateway, right? Put devices that don't have the capacity to run their own, or as put a gateway in
space.
Yeah. The one approach is an alternate approach, I guess. It's also tied to the key management and how often you rotate the keys, etc. But making it an invitation-only network, right? So you have the inventory of devices that you talk about. Yeah, and if you think about the problem about what services are you trying to protect and what these devices need to access, once you set those policies in place, you can put in the mechanisms for creating that. You know, what we do is we turn a service as dark, right? So dark means that, there's no IP address, there's nothing, you can't attack what you can't see, and it's invitation only, right? So for devices that are a $5 device or a $1,000 device that's an end node, you can decide what the rules are. The keys get rotated. There's embedded keys, and if there's a compromise, then there's a number of behavioral detection software today that can monitor endpoints, right, and say, hey, the signatures of this device is different than its norm, right? So establishing that norm. And there's a combination of endpoint security within overall architecture that protects services. I think makes sense.
So I think we established that PKI is good, passwords are bad, and people are not doing PKI. Or
There's a lack of, in this industry, again, in some cases, PKI is the first rate.
And some,
so there's, we should not overgeneralize that.
Got it.
Okay.
Now,
The problem here, I just want to add one point. The problem that I've seen within this industry is the lack of standards. So when we go into aviation, when we go into critical infrastructure ecosystems, they have agreed upon standards that all we have to do as a CA is enforce.
Yeah.
And I really am missing, and maybe it's I'm just too busy, but I haven't seen a set of standards around smart city devices. The gentleman here who was giving the first responder type, I mean, we need to treat those different than a 2G module on a manhole cover.
So let me ask this. Sounds like I believe the problem is not a technology problem, but an operational problem. So, and we cannot rely on people to do the right thing. We learned that in the last 20 years. Again, people are not doing the right thing unless they are regulated. They are forced to do certain things. So,
if I may
please.
add a point to that, I think also regulation alone is not going to work also. And that's what we are trying to do, to bring the awareness to ourselves through this community exchange. Like some have done some, very good work and out of necessity, right? And then, but these newcomers, they're just getting started. If we don't share out the best practices we have paid a price for, they're going to repeat the issues, problems. And so as a society, together and under GCTC, the Smart Cities and Communities Initiative, the leaders, they do see the importance of this lack of standard. Yes, so that at the strategic level is going to be part of what we together are going to address. And some of the outcomes from this roundtable, we're going to summarize and then glean the lessons, best practices, and then we can spread out so that other municipalities can adopt.
I realize there's the irony of somebody from government saying this, but that needs to happen very quickly because we have such demand for these projects to move forward, and while we don't have standards to rely on, we're making it up as we go.
So two things. The first, to manufacturers, we have a lot of vendors here. If cities came up with a contractual framework that requires PKI, that it's applicable, that requires that has a sort of verbiage for lifecycle management, that has verbiage for password management, inventory, indemnification of the risk, who is managing the network. If there was a framework that addressed most of these, would it make it easier for the vendors to provide services, because now they're not dealing with 10 different contracts, 20 different contracts?
So I'd say the key to breaking through all of this is 4 things. We talked about the regulations, we talked about the standards. You need to have certification for those standards that somebody can buy and know that that the manufacturer can do the work ahead of time and know that they're going to be successful, and that you can be assured that it's going to be operationally good for you. And then tie that forth to insurance, cyber insurance that says you have to have this or you don't get a good rate.
Or you have a high rate. Yeah.
Look at what UL has done for fires over the last 100 years.
Yes, no, absolutely. And UL is a great example. And we've been looking into UL and trying to tie that with the critical controls. Can we develop critical controls and build a sort of a vendor-agnostic certification body that certifies devices and services based on these standards.
We've already solved, we solved this general problem of how do you put controls and compliance in place in many domains already, right? PCI compliance for credit card handling, well understood. Security for cloud-based services for federal, for cities and other federal services, FedRAMP. That's a well understood. There's a set of controls. There's a compliance process. That's well. We need to simply apply that method, that same methodology of controls plus compliance to this space. The reason why it hasn't happened, I think the reason why it hasn't happened so far, is partly a question of scale. There are only half a dozen cloud service providers. So once Amazon and Microsoft and Google and IBM and so forth have gone through FedRAMP compliance for additional services on top of those is a relatively small piece of work. On the other hand, there are thousands of IoT devices, and many of them, in fact, most of them manufactured by the lowest bidder from Shenzhen. And so we've got to figure out how do we actually capture the responsibility of the right point in the supply chain and put the right kind of quality certification in place.
So Jeff, exactly as you said, I think if you look at how to incentivize the smart cities buying power through procurement and contractual abilities, that in itself would incentivize the market that now they are a larger buying power, and so they would then implement everything that we said, the right, well, for the lack of standards, but the right controls and whatnot. And then the beneficiary is not only the cities, but also the manufacturers and the vendors, because they don't have to then incur the cost of having competing, specifications, if you will, to win those contracts.
Right. Who loses though? The people who lose from that, and there will be losers, people who lose from that are in fact the small startups.
Yes.
Because it's expensive to go through a complete audit, that audit starts with going and it's getting the provenance of every single line of code in your software, all the way back to the real Linux distribution, if that's what you're using. And then taking it all the way through the penetration testing and all that. That's expensive, so small startups will lose from this. And right now we're in this phase of IoT where an awful lot of that, the innovation is being driven by small startups. So there's a real tension there. But we will have to get to that point.
Yeah.
To give you guys an example, do you guys remember the descrambled cable boxes back in like the late 90s, early 2000s? Buying from me, crazy number. We put a stop to that. So through certification, so all those device manufacturers from Shenzhen and from all around the world use a PKI certificate via certification. Now that device is certified and can be used on any cable network around the US. So we were able to solve a problem of people stealing bandwidth and stealing programming, and we're also able to certify the devices. And so, since 2003, that cable network in the US has been highly secure and has also been able to authenticate all the devices around the world, around the country, up to their head end. So they're maximizing their profit from the bandwidth. They're providing services they should be down to the devices, and those devices aren't vulnerable because they're certified. So it's a use case. I hate to say it, but IoT has been around for a long time. It's just, we needed something to do after cloud, so IoT came, and now blockchain's here. So,
please.
So I'm wondering if any of you folks have taken a look at the Underwriters Labs, their cybersecurity assurance program, ULCAT. And they have developed a set of standards, and it's now going through an ANSI process. So I'm just wondering, and it is
for IoT or for?
Yes, it's focused on IoT. So
I was not aware of that.
Yeah,
That's new.
Yeah, so it may be relevant and maybe a place to look at.
Absolutely.
I'm not
Absolutely.
familiar with it, so.
We've looked at it. My reading is that it's useful, but woefully inadequate. In other words, the devices that we're creating have so much software-defined behavior, which has not is in no way anticipated by the kind of controls which are mentioned in that kind of standard. And so yeah, it's a good starting point, but it's, you should not buy something based upon that just yet, because you need to be able to look at, see, where are the gaps, what else do I need to do in terms of the certification, the testing beyond that.
So let me ask another question. Firmware updates. We know that there is no secure core. Do we? And I do realize that there are a wide variety of sensors out there. Some sensors are very down. You burn this firmware on a chip, and you cannot modify it. But then on the other side, you have sensors running, like small operating systems. Some sensors are running Linux. Do you have an ability, or do you care, or does that concern you, not being able to update that firmware or patch a vulnerability on that system? Is this an issue?
Yes.
Did you?
I can't really go into it, but yes. I mean, we've had that situation.
You did.
There's a medical device manufacturer right now with 400,000 implanted devices that has a vulnerability.
And it cannot be updated.
Well, it can be updated. They need to write it. They need to write the update, and then they're done via Bluetooth, so it can't be just done wirelessly over the air. So the patient has to go into the doctor's office and have it be all arranged. Yeah. So I can continue to scare.
And they have to go through the whole FDA approval.
Right, for the and that's I think I'm not even going to get into the medical devices, because the medical device and IoT is a bigger problem. We talk about patching. Well, even if you have a patch, you cannot patch a device. We have medical devices running Windows XP, and the manufacturer says you cannot patch this device. If you update it, we don't support it anymore.
And Adnan, we have to also bring, although we're mostly talking about smart cities application, but to some extent, the industrial Internet of Things. There are a lot of SCADA systems and other ICTs that are having codes that needed to be patched, but because they are in the operational environment, there are some challenges.
So you got to ask yourself, why the need for patching, right? So, and what does it expose? It exposes a vulnerability that somebody can exploit, right? And why is that a problem? Because these machines will talk to anybody, right? So if you flip the model again and say, this is a machine that has to talk to only the system, everybody else in the world you don't talk to, then patching no longer is an issue.
So a brief sort of information. I mentioned Cisco MUD protocol, MUD. It's the manufacturer usage description. Basically what it does is any device that is plugged into the network through some mechanism that I don't want to take a lot of time, but grabs its usage description from the manufacturer's website. So the URL is burned into the device, its network stack. As it's getting an IP address, it gets an IP through DHCP, it sends its usage description URL. The network controller goes to the manufacturer's website, downloads the usage description, which basically tells the network, this device needs to talk on this port to these IPs, to these domains, and that's it. The network is automatically, sort of designed to, like as software design networks, to make sure that that device is only talking to that IP and that domain, and that's it. So even if that device gets compromised, it cannot talk to anything else on the network. It cannot even, use to attack another IP address because it's not allowed to talk to. So there are some efforts. What we want to do is actually the Quad 9 effort that I mentioned. The protocol that we want to build is sort of an additional layer onto that, so that not only at the boot time, but if that device gets compromised and it starts resolving malicious domains, we want to be able to send similar message to that device saying, you're not supposed to do that, turn off, please.
In the scenario you just described, what if the description got compromised?
So there are, and through certificates, we actually solve this problem. We can say, through PKI, I mean, this is the great thing about PKI, we can say, you know what, this device can get description from this, and we sign the description through, the private key of the vendor. And it has the vendor, so when it receives it, unless it can decrypt it and make sense of it, it's not going to be able to use it. So we have solutions for that. It's just we're not using it. Again, this is an operational problem. It's not a technical challenge.
A lot of it's cost too.
Yes.
A lot of it comes down to cost, because if you're running a full G&G EPM that has all their applets and their OS and the secure TPM at, $100 and some odd each, sure, we can do over-the-air updates, those real simple. But when I'm talking about that manhole cover or stoplight sensor, yeah, they don't have the ability to reach out. So,
And also the processing power, right? I mean, it was mentioned that these devices don't even have the bandwidth. They wake up twice a day, send a small burst of signal, and then they go to sleep.
I'm here, that's it.
That's it.
That's it.
How close are we knowing enough about smart city IoT from our experience so far to be able to start to, maybe this exists, I'm naive, an architecture around this that says, okay, these are the kinds of use case domains and scenarios and capability profiles. and these are the relationships between them, and these are the way these things work, and to start to actually build out a security service architecture that actually interfaces to devices that can be understood as an industry and built to.
So
And the startups can write to it, and the device
Well,
people can.
that capability exists today in terms of security analytics. I can sit there and monitor who's talking to whom on my network and characterize that traffic and when it is and how it is, and actually start raising alarms when it's not doing that.
So it sounds like it's instrumented to be able to analyze what's happening.
But
And then I'm asking
that's
for the
not
next
I think
thing.
you're asking who can establish
What
that
is the
framework.
standard? What is the
See,
standard? The
So I'm
framework?
looking to you now.
The
We didn't
framework
actually
and
doing that. That's what I wanted to
standards
say.
what these should
I'm
be.
looking
We've been
to you.
working on, we've
Using
been
that.
talking to Trend Micro. What you are looking for, and we mentioned this in the call, that it is called reference architecture. And we've been talking to Trend Micro, who done reference architecture frameworks for operational technology, OT environments. We've been talking to Microsoft, who done reference architecture for their Azure IoT deployments.
Security architecture, specific.
Yes, specifically for how do smart cities securely deploy these technologies? What is a go-to guide that you can go to and say, let's look to see what they recommend. And so this is one thing. So go ahead, please. All right.
But we're using IoT as though it's one thing, and it isn't. I mean, literally, IoT is nothing from this Fitbit on my wrist, all the soil sensor, checking the moisture in your garden, and all the way to GE monitoring getting a terabyte of diagnostic data on a jet engine that it's like. Right? It's everything. The problem with coming up with a reference architecture for IoT is that there is no single thing that is IoT. IoT is a pattern which emerges in a bunch of different kinds of solutions. It's a pattern which is typically involves sensing data and sending it somewhere else for analytics, and then maybe sent back for operational controls to the device, optionally, maybe not. But that pattern is so wide.
Yeah,
so
but you can't have generic things. You can say, for each project that you have, put it on its own beeline. Don't just put everything in a flat network. Segment your network.
Except that simple example, put everything on its own beeline. I'm busy working on how we're going to do vehicle-to-vehicle IoT at the edge over sliced 5G networks, and VLANs don't apply there, right? So the point is, there was no single reference architecture, no single model. Now, we can come up with a number of generic patterns and say, this seems to apply to quite a number of use cases. Let's see if we can come up with some controls around that. And we can use things between those. But there will always be things that don't fit into those patterns that say, this is not an example of an existing thing that Microsoft has written certification or reference architecture for, and we have to go and do it again. That's always about.
So we will always be inventing new things, new things, and there are some well understood things that have emerged, and when new things come on board, they're not yet kind of in this. They can be a place for them in the architecture, but they're not yet kind of codified as to exactly how they fit, and some of them never ever will be. But there can be some standardized things.
Sure, there can indeed. I mean, there are lots of examples of standardized things. All the sensors that can be built into your car today, which are for doing things like smart cruise control, so you follow the car in front. There's, all the techniques for those kinds of things are being standardized and locked down, and that's all good. These patterns will emerge, and we want to identify those patterns when we have enough examples. We can say this looks like a good pattern. Let's work on this one. But don't we have to avoid the tendency to talk about sort of IoT in general, because there ain't no such thing.
If I may ask a quick question. Since we're talking about standardization, how do we develop specifications? My question is the technology and are the capabilities already existing so that if the specifications aren't in fact developed, that they can be in fact used in the field? Because I'm hearing some things here that makes me sort of hear, you know what, we don't even have the processes, we don't have the technology, it's not even ready. So we can make the specs for the city, but they're not going to even be able to implement that because the technologies, the manufacturers are not ready. So I'm curious, how ready is the marketplace?
Actually, manufacturers are going to be ready. And here is why.
Okay.
Because manufacturers are driven by demand. So there needs to be increased awareness for the cities. So cities should say, you know what, not only do I want a smart street light, but also I want to be able to update that. I want you to be able to patch it, fix it, it needs to fit into these, password practices, etc. Unless city requires that, manufacturers are not going to do anything.
Okay.
Anything, because it's bottom line. Everything that we add is a cost, which will then be reflected to the consumer. However, if you get enough manufacturers and economies of scale, people are going to find a way. We find a way to do many weird things. So, but there needs to be an increased awareness, and that's why, as Global Cyber Alliance, we've been looking into a contractual language. Can we develop a contractual language that has many different things, so that a city can just pick and choose the clauses that they want, but the clause that they choose is a packet that addresses that specific risk. So they do the demand, and then I also want to share that contractual language with, most of the large manufacturers, so that I can say, you know what, does this make sense? Because I also don't want to live in a vacuum where, we say, do not sell me a product that has a vulnerability. It's just not possible. But you can say, if there is a vulnerability on a device, you are going to do reasonable efforts within X number of days, develop a patch and update this. Or you're going to have mechanisms to update these devices, etc. So
the example is when the automotive industry initially didn't have seatbelts, right? But then eventually, and I know I'm getting back to the whole compliance, regulation, whatever else, but eventually the market realized that, sure, it will be an element of cost, but if you don't have seatbelts, not only the public won't buy it because it's a safety issue, but eventually it became a regulation and compliance issue that in the United States of America, you want to sell an automobile, you better have a functioning seatbelt. And then everybody, whether it was law enforcement, whether it was the government, whether it was the manufacturer, whether it's the consumer, they all had that awareness that by golly, you better have seatbelts in the cars because everybody was vested. And I think what we are talking about is identifying best practices, identifying things that we can take advantage of so that these busybody cyber criminals really have a hard time to come and attack our smart cities so that we can realize the potential of innovation.
A company, I got involved with GCP right a couple of years ago and talking to G-Bytes at the time, and I said, we were talking about what best practices we needed to create. And I said, one of the most important best practices we need to create is best practices around RFPs from cities. The cities need to ask the right questions.
Yes.
Because the stuff's changing so fast, we can't give you a say, you have to conform to this set of rigid categories, because the categories are still evolving. But the RFPs around a set of cybersecurity practices, those you can certainly put in there.
And the sooner that we have those, again, getting back to the need for them, because kind of going back to yesterday, the beginning of the day, it's like, as far as the community is concerned, in smart cities, it's all about trustworthiness. And if they don't trust the things that we're putting out there, then we lose. Yes. And as the municipalities that are putting that out there. And so we definitely need help, and we need it fast.
So absolutely. So we are sort of running out of time. What I want to let you know about is perfection is enemy to good.
Oh, absolutely.
We will never get to that 100% secure state. But as GCTC and Global Cyber Alliance, we are trying to sort of make a dent in this by procurement guides, by sample RFPs, by regulations. Because we do work with DHS, we do work with UK government to influence what they are doing and how they are doing. And we were able to, in DMARC, influence government entities to regulate and require DMARC, which is an email authentication for all the government entities. So these conversations are very helpful, and they are giving us an insight into what, how you guys are looking at the problem, especially the vendors. It's great to hear from the vendors about how they are doing this. So all I can say is just follow GCTC, follow GCA. A lot of things are going to come out. Please also allow us to reach out to you and get your opinion, because we want to hear from you. We want to be able to say, what's the important? Here is a procurement guide, or here is an sample RFP. What do you think? Does this work for you? Or you look at it, you're like, no, this is not it, or this is missing that. And now what we do is, as a community, we build these solutions. Then we make these solutions globally available, which serves GCA's purpose of existence of reducing systemic risk. So everybody does. So with that, I really appreciate you taking the time, coming here, listening, talking, and contributing. Thank you very much. And just keep your eyes out and ears out for what is coming down the road with GCTC and our advisory committee. So thank you very much.
Thank you.